Good morning. It's Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and, of course, Insegna Booksellers. And today is program 44 of World History by Tom Padula live on Facebook. And it's Thursday, the 18th of August, 2022. Time is going. In another couple of weeks, we'll be in springtime mode here in Melbourne. But I continue my journey and thinking that very soon it'll be almost a year that I've been on this, and what a journey it has been. And it's an interesting one too, because today I'm going to show you right at the end of this presentation, lesson, podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to show you a bit of my trip up north in the Northern Territory to Darwin, and we'll make our way down over the next few weeks. So that's an interesting one for everyone to see, and I hope you enjoy it. Of course, I've been thinking about, the areas of the world that I've covered so far. I've covered the 5 continents, but I seem to, I haven't neglected it. It's, you just can't do everything at the same time. So at the moment, I'm concentrating on the English invasion of Britain. We're talking about the times of the North, the Vikings era, around 800 years after the birth of Christ to about 1300. So in that 400-500 years, the Northmen came from the cold areas of the world into more warmer places, but more than anything else, in the areas in which the Roman Empire had extended its hands. And then once the Roman Empire became, Christian, in the sense that Christianity became the empire's religion from about 13 after Constantinople, Emperor Constantinople in 313 declared that Christianity would be the only religion the only official religion of the empire. In other words, the other gods, the multiplicity of gods, etc., they weren't going to be favoured in terms of, government help, if you like. You'd have to work it out, this one here, because once a religion or anything becomes part of the state, then everything around the state revolves around the laws of the land. And so if we think about the northern tribes coming down, good morning, Harry Varelis. Yes, thank you very much. The minute you think about Europe, let's say, you have to look at it from the point of view of the North Pole, going down to Rome, let's say, in that fascia, coming down. So from the cold weather, it's very hard for humans at the time, the Neolithic people of the north, in Russia, in Ireland, all the areas, the cold areas, to actually make a living and survive the winter. So in a way, eventually, when they learned to go down further south, and they were pretty rough people, they just wanted to grab whatever they could, silver. The silver, they said, it was a good trading, they used it for trading. So that's what happened there is they invaded down, then they were violent initially. There were a lot of wars and a lot of killing and maiming and raping and you name it. The villages were burned. But eventually, with the new waves of people from the north into the southern part, it's much easier to live in a peaceful environment than in a violent one, for many reasons. And so slowly, they sort of, as the generations went by, you learned that, in fact, the ideals of Christianity were good for humanity in a way, because they predicated peace, and they predicated but they were intolerant of the many gods that people believed in. So there was a religious conflict. So the other said, well, we believe in Odin, Freya, whatever. We don't want to believe in this other god. So in other words, the environment in which you live determines what you believe in and how you live. Welcome to Antonio Danzi. And that is important. It's important to realise that after the wars, peace comes. Unfortunately, once we get peace, after a while people get bored or they get ambitious or whatever, and they want to extend their power. So it becomes, oh, I'm going to conquer those lands, they're mine, and we protect them. So they develop an army. And this is what this world history is all about, trying to put some order into our thinking of normal people who we live in our own bubble. Therefore, it's very hard for people to actually tackle things like history. Who cares? But I tell you, this week I tried something new. I wore a top hat in my last podcast, and I got the greatest number of people looking me up. Now, and I thought to myself, isn't it funny? Just one hat brings in an extra 60, 70 people, whereas when I deal with the real issues. It's the numbers of fewer people get bored. But I encourage you to look into history, and we were very lucky to have platforms, television like Netflix, etc. That's what I'm watching at the moment. But it's 11:31, and I've talked a bit too much, but it's all part of this. It's all part of this. And today we're going to start with St. Patrick's. St. Patrick's, Jennifer Stanya Baba, welcome. St. Patrick's actually was the one who brought Christianity to Ireland. So let's have a look at the start now. St. Patrick's converts Ireland. One of those who went into Ireland was a monk known to us as St. Patrick. And here we celebrate this on the 17th of March each year. Now, I remember when I came to Australia and I went to school, they brought me to this St. Patrick's March in the city. And I still remember it with great affection. It was a beautiful moment for me coming from Montemurro in Italy, in a small town in Italy. As a result of his preaching, the Irish Celts became Christians long before the English did. Indeed, early in the Dark Ages, Ireland was for a time one of the most civilized parts of Western Europe. Because by becoming Christian, they were part of the Roman Empire, and all the laws and the culture of that particular type of government, of empire, they're part of it. After Caesar, they were very, very civilized in terms of the others. Now, we're talking about here the Angles, the Jutes, the Saxons, the Picts, and others, Saxons. So, in other words, Ireland and England, and then you've got to go into Russia, into Norway and Finland, all those areas, Denmark and above. All those places, they are pretty rough places. And they believed in many gods. And we've spoken about before. St. Columba makes converts from Iona, I-O-N-A, Iona. One Irish monk, St. Columba, founded a monastery on the tiny island of Iona off the west coast of Scotland. There he trained missionaries who travelled through North Britain, telling the story of Christ to the Picts and the Scots, and even to some of the English invaders who had settled in the north. The map, can I show you the map? I'll show you the map. Welcome to Nino Alberti, and happy birthday to you. I saw it this morning. I'll send you a message. Yeah, that's, hoopla, I can't turn around. Here, this is the map. See that? The angles, the Wales there, and you've got, Wales, and you've got Scotland, Ireland, Brittany, that's in France, but the British, that's with Britain, the British people, the Britons, came from. Saxon, the Jutes, the Angles, there you are. Okay, these are the places. And some of them are mountainous. And let me turn it around, otherwise, here we go. Okay. Now, St. Columbus, therefore, some can open the map on this page shows how the Christianity had driven out through the side doors of their new house by the heathen English began to come in again through the back door. So what does that mean? It means that initially the Danes and the Britons and the Saxons who believed in many gods, they were pretty rough with the Christians. They threw them out, a bit like what happened in Rome, where the Christians were initially given to the lions in the Colosseum, and they burned on the cross for 300 plus years, and then from that type of suffering, the actual religion settled officially. But once it settled officially, then the people in power started to using that religion to dominate. So if you don't believe in this, you don't believe in me, you don't believe in this, we're going to kill you unless you convert. So that's where the Crusades come in, and therefore Christianity, in a way, moves away from the ideals of Christ. And it becomes more political, and it becomes a rough religion as well in some cases, unless you convert. And then the Muslims have done the same, and these wars are still going on. We see this in the media all the time. So the world has to come to grips with these problems. I don't know. Can't offer solutions as individuals. We are 1 in 8 billion at the moment. You and me. So the only thing that we can hope to do is to educate slowly but surely. But the reality is, once people in government start throwing bombs around, look what happened in Russia, and we're scared of China doing the same. But the Chinese have had a long history of empires. They understand when to use power and how to use it. They don't want wars, really. But if you insist, then it comes to the wire. You have to fight. There's no other way. What do? So that's where diplomacy comes in. And I think the fights in the world should, you can do it with trade. And they're starting to use those trade amongst nations. We're not going to buy this from you, etc. So, but ultimately, if you push too far, then destruction comes in, and we go back hundreds of years in terms of our civilizations. And sometimes the civilization we live in doesn't come back for another 200-300 years. That's what's happened in the past. Will it happen in the future? Question mark. Who knows? English pirates became farmers. That's where from soldiering you do farming. Meanwhile, many of the Anglo-Saxon pirates had married pretty girls from among the captured Britons who had settled down to become farmers. So, they had plenty of food. They lived a good life. If we could have visited one of these barbarous ancestors of ours, we should have found him living in a rough wooden hut with poles in the walls for windows and another hole in the thatched roof for a chimney. Very rough. Altogether, his home would have reminded us more of a new Stone Age hut than of the villa of a well-to-do Roman British farmer. The British farmers, they used stones, marble, they built well. And that's what's happened to me this year. A month ago, I went to Darwin, and all I remember of Darwin was that was raised flat by the cyclone. And what happened now? You got to Darwin now, it's a modern city. It can withstand the cyclones now. I mean, unless it's a really, really bad one. But, normal cyclones, they can withstand it. So during the wet season, they have problems, maybe, with the wet season. But once the dry season comes on from April to October, I enjoyed 10, 12 days of absolute beautiful weather up there for the 2 weeks that I was travelling. And when we arrived to Perth, back to square one, to the cold weather. And Perth is, geographically further up than Sydney in terms of Australia. Think about that. And it was a bit cold, and so was Sydney anyway. But in the north, no. So you know what to do in winter, if you can afford it. Maybe the government could come in and say, we'll send half of the population up north for a couple of months in winter time. Dreaming is good. Altogether, his home would have reminded us more of a new Stone Age hut than of the villa and well-to-do Roman British farmer, which perhaps had occupied the same ground a century or two earlier. 7 main English kingdoms. There were 7 main English kingdoms in the British Isle, if you like. And I'm watching at the moment the last kingdom of Wessex. And it's a very interesting, very interesting series. The only problem lately is that my Netflix, for some reason, stops every 2 minutes, and I have to wait. I have to sort this one out. Our technology is not always up to scratch. And Telstra keeps on saying, you got to ring up for 5G. We're going to slow you down with 4G technology, and we want to know your credit card. We want to know this. We want to know that. So you think it's a scam? I'm not going to do it. Slowly but surely, I'll eventually resolve it. But really, our big institutions like Telstra, etc., stop doing this. If you're going to do improvements, do it, and that's it. Don't bother your customers. We pay you each month. Don't try to sell us all the time, continually. This badgering of your customers. Don't do it. Anyway, that's my contribution for today. 70 main English kingdoms. What a contrast too in government. Instead of being one country ruled by the officials of the emperor, Britain was again divided, as it had been before the Romans came, into a number of tribal kingdoms, which were often at war with each other. The map on page 83 shows you the 7, I've shown you those, the 7 kingdoms. We can come back to that anyway. And also the parts of the country held by the Britons. The Britons held quite a bit of the country, the Wessex part. But just as the Kassites brought horses as well as bloodshed in Babylon, the English brought something good to Britain, a rough and simple kind of democracy. So, these people here in the tribes, which you think of the Neolithic people, they elected their leaders. They had to be strong, but they also had advisors around, and before that person could do anything, he had to call the leaders of his tribe. And then they would agree. So it was a democratic thing, whereas the Romans hold real power. A bit like what we have now in China. The Communist Party is supposed to be communes. It's supposed to be where people have a say. Instead, it's become an emperor again. And the same with the other guy in Russia. But then we're not any better in democracy. We elect our leaders, and we're lucky that, in some parts of the world, we can elect people and the current government goes out peacefully. And now we've got this sort of situations in the election time in India, in New Guinea. Look at it, look at the world. So, when things like this pandemic, we're going back a little bit and reappraise our own, the way we live amongst ourselves. Closer to home is the word. Democracy of the moot, beginnings of trial by jury. Trial by jury. From time to time, every freeman gathered at an open-air meeting, or moot, M-O-O-T, to discuss the affairs of the village. The mayor or alderman acting as chairman. Villagers who were charged with crimes were judged by their fellow freemen of these moots. Less frequently, freemen from a number of neighbouring villages met to discuss more serious crimes at 100 moots. And at times of great danger, there might be a folk moot, at which discussions was led by the king or chief of the whole tribe. Historians think that our British system of trial by jury has grown from these simple beginnings. Now, we've seen this up north in Uluru, the paper that they agreed to about 5 years ago. That was a type of Indigenous democracy at work. Now, that's to be appraised by the people in power and also by the population at large. One needs to understand what the complaints are. Because I can tell you, after my visit there, it's going to take a couple of centuries before all this gets solved. You can't do it overnight. You cannot do it overnight. It's impossible. But what you can do, you can improve slowly but surely. You've got the direction and you move towards it. And then you make the necessary changes as you move along. And hopefully one day we'll all respect each other. Augustine brings Christianity in 597 AD after the birth of Christ, 97, it's 600 almost. There was another Roman invasion of Britain, but this time the invaders were unarmed, the priests. Pope Gregory sent a small band of monks under the leadership of St. Augustine to preach Christianity to the heathen English. And I remember one of my principals in Marston College was Father Augustine. Now I know why it chose that name. Kent converted. That's Kent, that's one of the kingdoms. The missionaries were welcomed by Ethelbert, the king of Kent, who had married a Christian princess from the land of the Franks across the Channel. The land of the Franks, current France. Soon the king and all of the people of Kent became Christians. A church was built in the king's village of Canterbury, on the ruins of an old Roman church that had been burnt by the forefathers of the new converts, by the Danes. They used to burn everything. Today, the chief cathedral of the Church of England stands on the same ground. Now, the English become Christians. The people of Northumbria, where Celtic missionaries from Iona had already made some converts, were the next to become Christians. Mercia, in the middle of England, was the last strongholds of Woden. That's, the god, the main god of the multiple gods that they believed in. But within 100 years of Augustine's landing, practically all of the English had been baptized into the new faith. Therefore, you had to denounce, you had to reject the others. A bit like what we've done here. Italian citizen, I become an Australian citizen, and I haven't gone back to, and some people have got double citizenship, but really, once you're in Australia and your parents are buried here, etc., 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 what do? You call yourself Italian still, Italian background, but not, you're Australian. And the Aborigines, the indigenous people here have to accept the newcomers, and we have to respect what they have. Therefore, January 26, leave it there as a reminder of the colonial times. Good for the indigenous people. Understand it's good, even though the suffering of 200 years, do not extinguish it. Make it part of the culture. Participate in it beforehand. It says, well, before that, 25th, 24th, 23rd, the 20th, it's all Indigenous celebrations. After 26th, the colonial celebrations. And we go to the Indigenous one, they go to the other one, and eventually they fuse in together over a couple of weeks. I've been saying this for 20 years now. And, but in the main media, they want to fight. One side, they're just as strong on both sides, and whoever got the power wins. So that's it. The venerable Bede Augustine and his followers had brought with them not only Christianity but also some interest in learning. Monasteries were founded in which thoughtful men might learn to read, write and study. In one such monastery at Jarrow in Northumbria, there lived a learned monk who is generally known as the Venerable Bede, St. Bede's. There's a school down near Brighton called St. Bede's. He wrote a history book which tells practically all we know of what happened in England during the first 2 centuries of the Dark Ages. Charlemagne teacher Alcuin, who was English, was also a Northumbrian monk who must have learned much from St. Bede's writings. Egbert of Wessex, the first king of all England, and that's what I'm watching at the moment. You can see that some gleams of knowledge were beginning in flicker here and there in the night of ignorance. At the same time, Anglo-Saxons and Jutes were beginning to think of themselves as Englishmen. At the Battle of Allendoon in 825, Egbert, king of Wessex, defeated the Mercians and was recognised as overlord by the other Anglo-Saxon kings. But just at about this time, a new wave of invaders arrived, destroying monasteries and plundering towns. The Danish pirates put the clock back in England. But as they did in Europe after Charlemagne's death, it is time we learn something about the Danes. And you're going to wait until next week now. Very interesting, huh? This is really goes really well with what I've been watching in the Viking series. Now we're going to go from England to China. Sima Qian and his records of the historian. The author of records of the historian, Sima Qian, 145 BC, we don't know when he died, was born in what is now Shaanxi province. Encouraged by his father, he began to read ancient books when he was still very young. At the age of 20, he started to travel extensively and gathered a great deal of material on ancient celebrities. Later, he was appointed to an official post and often went on tours with the emperor. Don't forget, China was very, very advanced in terms of Europe for centuries, for a couple of thousand years. They were quite, civilized in many ways in terms of the development of writing and making records of history and the control of the people, etc. Not long after his father's death, Sima Qian succeeded to his position as the official in charge of historical records. Welcome to Antonio Carlos Zaccaria. Good to have you on. Thus, he had the opportunity to read many books and made a great many notes. In 104 BC, before the birth of Christ, we're talking about in Europe 800 after, here 100 years before, Sima Qian commenced his records of the historian. Falling foul of the emperor, he was castrated. he lost his... he was castrated and dismissed from office. People, they say, this guy here, I don't like him anymore, castrate him. And they would do what, they were rough. If the soldier didn't do what the emperor wouldn't get paid, his family would suffer. And the consequences were great. A bit like we want to travel to China, we want to travel to Russia, and we want to do what we want to do. No way. You got to do what the people in power there want you to do. But we are democratic people, so we can't accept somebody telling us what to do. We want to say whatever we want to say, and we want to be free to do it without punishment. And that's the beauty of democracy. And that's what what those tribes in England were, the seven kingdoms. They had a sort of democracy, like in Athens. But even in Athens, they didn't allow women or slaves to be part of the democratic process. Records of the historian is composed of 130 chapters. It starts from the legendary Emperor Guangdi, and ends with the reign of Emperor Wudi of the Han dynasty. And we've talked about this before, and we're going to come back to them, spanning 3,000 years. It was the first comprehensive biographical history took to appear in China. It covers a wide range of subjects: political, economic, cultural, military, etc. Its language is terse and lively and easy to understand, like my poetry. Records of the historian is not only a valuable historical work, but also an outstanding work of literature. Well done, Simakian. I might come and read you when I find one of your books. Very good. We're getting a few people from China. One of the things we learn about China here, the importance for you to learn the provinces and where they are. So when you talk about, I'm struggling with all these things. I really do. And I hope that you forgive my mistakes. I really do. But now we go from China to North America and really South America as well, because we're looking at the glaciers. Why did Christopher Columbus was supposed to have discovered America? He discovered America for the Spaniards so that they could plunder it, and the indigenous people there are quite right, but it's unavoidable. One of these days, now we're preparing ourselves to go to the moon, to other planets, and when we go there, what are you going to go there for? Just to say hello? It's just in case something happens to the world, we blow ourselves up, we've got somewhere else to go. That's important. And also, when they say there's so much poverty in the world, why would you go to Mars? Feed the people. Yes, but that's short term. We've got the food, we just don't distribute well. But, you got to create work as well. And you've got to look into the future, so how can we improve? And that's how we can do it today. We made a lot of progress with our technology. So what do we do with it? Well, I can actually go online and do what I'm doing. And then I go to the clubs and some people say, I don't want to have my photo taken. Why not? Just in case, because, you got divorced, blah, 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 blah. And people they object to it. Why do you object? I mean, there's 5G all around. Your picture is everywhere. Oh, yes, but you can't do it. It doesn't matter if somebody else does it from another place or they'd get discovered. They just, there are no secrets anymore. Yeah, that's for sure. Glaciers. The onset of the last glacial maximum after 30,000 years BP. Before what? Before Christ, I suppose, saw the expansion of alpine glaciers and continental ice sheets that blocked migration routes out of Beringia. By 21,000 years BP, and possibly thousands of years earlier, the Cordilleran and Laurentide ice sheets coalesced east of the Rocky Mountains, closing off a potential migration route into the centre of North America. Alpine glaciers in the coastal ranges and the Alaskan Peninsula isolated the interior of Beringia from the Pacific coast. Don't forget, Beringia is that bridge between Asia and North America. Coastal alpine glaciers and lobes of Cordilleran ice coalesced into Piedmont glaciers that covered large stretches of the coastline as far south as Vancouver Island and formed an ice lobe across the Straits of Juan de Fuca by 15,000 before Christ, of course. 18,000 cal years, whatever. Coastal alpine glaciers started to retreat around 19,000, while Cordilleran ice continued advancing to the Puget lowlands up to 14,000. You've got to know North America well and the regional parts before you can understand all this. But the idea, this is just to give you an idea that there's a lot that you can do to learn about, different parts of the world, especially in America. It's very interesting because the north of America and the south, central and south, they're covered from the glacial areas to the equator and back to the glacial area in the South Pole. So, it's a pretty good, the Americas, both north and south together, and the centre is very small. And then there are all those islands as well. Interesting part. Coastal alpine glaciers started to retreat around 90,000. Even during the maximum extent of coastal ice, unglaciated refugia persisted on present-day Ireland that supported terrestrial and marine mammals. As the glaciation occurred, as the ice became water, refugia expanded until the coast became ice-free by 15,000 years before Christ. The retreat of glaciers on the Alaskan Peninsula provided access from Beringia to the Pacific coast by around 17,000 years before Christ. The ice barrier between Deering, Alaska and the Pacific coast broke up starting around 13,500 years. The ice-free corridor to the interior of North America opened between 13,000 and 12,000 before Christ. Glaciation in eastern Siberia during was limited to 12 Pine and Valley glaciers in mountain ranges and did not block access between Siberia and Beringia. Now, we're going to do next time climate and biological environment. I've picked up this sort of information, of course, from the iPhone and from computers. I encourage you to look them up. World history. There's a lot being written about it. I'm just trying to do this for my friends and because whoever wants to. I'm not the depository of all knowledge, I can assure you. Oh, well, that's it. Now, what do we do now? Do you remember? We go to before the invasion. Before the invasion. Here we go. And we are doing at the moment, what are we doing? We are doing, let me see my notes. This is what happened. You remember we talked about boys and girls before. Then we got here women and men. And we start in, we spoke about, the initiation of boys and girls, etc. And this is what happened to boys who lived in the mouth of the Murray River. We know the Murray River is the one we've got here in Victoria and New South Wales. Soon after their beards began to grow, youths were suddenly seized at night by the men and taken to some distance away from the main camp. The women made a pretense of trying to keep them by holding on to them and by throwing firebrands at their captors. You can't take our child. But they're going to do it. It's all a pretense. In the bush, the men pulled out the newly growing beards of the youths and then covered their bodies with ochre, with clay paint, yellow or white. No, ochre is yellow. Well, anyway. The men stopped them sleeping or eating for 3 days and nights and performed many ceremonies. Over the next 6 months, all this was repeated 3 times, while the youths were kept away from the rest of the people. During this time, there were many different kinds of foods they could not eat, and they learned the sacred myths and the laws of the people. Finally, they returned to the community and were regarded as men. Now, when I came to Australia and before in Italy, and I was studying about our indigenous people, the Aboriginals, they called them savages. And they did not understand, the writers, they didn't have knowledge about the practices of the people. Just because you don't wear anything, in the desert and it's hot, etc., you've got to understand where people live. if they're in small communities, they can't have all the facilities we have today. You don't need to have a toilet, you just do it somewhere behind a bush. You've got to find water if you haven't got it. You can't have a proper shower. You've got to go into a river or lake and got to swim in there to have a good bath. And when it rains, well, you get your shower then. So these are the considerations when we study Neolithic peoples. In other words, people who live by what they need to find in terms of eating and in order to whatever they wear, depending on the climate they have and in what houses they live in. Those are the basics of life. And whether they chase up animals or fish, and, then you need some fruit, you need some vegetables, basics. In the Melbourne area, that's where we live now, where I live now, when a boy was about 13, he was taken away by the men and for about a month was given instructions in religion and law, with their own religion and their own laws. At the end of this time, one of his front teeth was knocked out. Terrible. Can you imagine? He got one of the teeth. So whenever you see pictures of Indigenous people, if the tooth is broken, that's because of this. This showed everyone that he had been through part of the process of making him a man. You don't just become a man, you've got to go through certain practices. After another 5 years or so, he was again taken away by the men and given further instruction. After this, he was treated as a full man who had earned the right to marry. Now, I'm going to stop there because I think that's what I'm going to do. Yes, did I do? One more. In the Western Desert, as the boys were led out of the camp, the women, particularly their mothers and sisters, wailed to express their grief at the loss of their sons or brothers. For in a way, the boy was thought to die and to be reborn again as a man. Meantime, in the camps of the adult men, there was much discussion. Each father had an important matter to talk over with his wife's brother, the boy's mother's brother. They were arranging a wife for the boy. A girl baby in the right relationship would be promised to him after he had gone through the necessary stages of initiation. He would still have to wait for her many years until she was old enough to marry. We're going to stop there. He didn't just marry, he had to earn the girl. And the girl generally, the younger girls were given to older men. So when they went, then she could marry again, and that's when she became more in charge of her own future. Still with some, a few things that they could not participate in the men's quarters, but also the men could not go into the women's quarters. So there was a bit of a balance. This is before the invasion. I taught this in the 1980s. And I wrote my poems then. I should write more. But anyway, we're going to go to A.B. Patterson, Banjo Patterson. Here we go. Banjo Patterson is a wonderful Australian writer. Okay? Here, A.B. Patterson. Banjo. I know they call him Banjo. I like Banjo Patterson, even though I don't like, when people call people names. But if it's a nice one, why not? You can call him King, as long as it's respectful. How the Favourite Bit Us is the name of the poem here. "Aye," said the boozer, "I tell you it's true, sir. I once was a punter with plenty of pelf. But gone is my glory. I'll tell you the story. How I stiffened my horse and got stiffened myself. 'Twas a mare called the Cracker. I came down to back her, but found she was favourite all of a rush. The folk just did pour on to lay 6 to 4 on, and several bookies were killed in the crush. You've got to understand this special language about racing and betting. You know. It seems old Tomato was stiff, though a starter. They reckoned him fit for the Caulfield to keep. The block and the donor were scratched by their owner. They're all names of horses. Welcome to Asunda Lombardi. He only was offered 3/4 of the sweep. We knew Salamander was slow as a gander. The mare could have beat him the length of the straight. And old Manumission was out of condition. And most of the others were running off weight. No doubt someone blew it, for everyone knew it. The bets were all gone, and I muttered in spite, if I can get a copper, by jingo, I'll stop her. Let the public fall in, it will serve the brutes right. I said to the jockey, now listen, my cocky, you watch as you are cantering down by the stand. I'll wait where the toff is and give you the offers. You're only to win if I lift up my hand. I then tried to back her. What a price is the cracker. Our books are all full, sir. Each bookie did swear. My mind then I made up, my fortune I played up. I bet every shilling against my own mare. I strolled to the gateway. The mare in the straight way was shifting and dancing, appalling the ground. The boy saw me enter and wheeled for his canter when a darned great mosquito came buzzing around. They breed them at Exham, it's risky to vex them. They suck a man dry at a sitting, no doubt. But just as the mare passed, he fluttered my hair past. I lifted my hand and I flattened him out. Bang! I was stunned when they started. The mare simply darted away to the front when the flag was let fall. For none could match her, and none tried to catch her. She finished a furlong in front of them all. You bet that I went for the boy whom I sent for, the moment he weighed and came out of the stand. Who paid you to win? Come on up this minute. Lord love ya, said he, why you lifted your hand? It was true by St. Peter that cursed musketeer had broke me so broke that I hadn't a brown. And you'll find that the best course is when dealing with horses to win when you are able and keep your hands down. So they must, I honestly don't understand how the favourite beat us. I don't understand. Hello, Stephen Ross Ferraro. I have rung you, but we'll talk after this if you like. I'll call you then. How the favourite beat us. This is about betting horses, having your own horse. Joke is how the favourite beat us. So this is from Banjo Patterson. Beautiful. And welcome. Oh, thanks, Stephen. It's all right. No problems. How the favourite beat us. Now, Henry Lawson, the drover's wife, on page 24, she has few pleasures to thank. Okay. So we remember the wife decided to be her own person and not wait for the husband. So where are we? Page 24, okay. All right, this continues with The Drover's Wife by Henry Lawson, another great Australian writer. Henry Lawson and Banjo Patterson. They are must to read. So we go from there and, yes, Night of Nature, whatever. Okay. She has few pleasures to think of as she sits here alone by the fire, on guard against a snake. All days are much the same to her, but on Sunday afternoon she dresses herself, tidies and the children, smartens up baby and goes for a lonely walk along the bush track, pushing an old perambulator in front of her. A perambulator. Remember, it's like a pusher. Pushing your children. Okay. Look up perambulator. She does this every Sunday. She takes as much care to make herself and the children look smart as she would if she were going to the block in the city. To the block in the city, huh? There was already the block. We have that opposite Myers, the block visited. There's nothing to see, however, and not a soul to meet. That's in the bush. You might walk for 20 miles along this track without being able to fix a point in your mind, unless you are a bushman. This is because of the everlasting maddening sameness of the stunted trees, that monotony which makes a man long to break away and travel as far as trains can go, and sail as far as ships can sail, and further. But this bushwoman is used to the loneliness of it. As a girl wife, she hated it, but now she would feel strange away from it. She's glad when her husband returns, but she does not gush or make a fuss about it. She gets him something good to eat and tidies up the children. She seems contented with her lot. She loves her children, but has no time to show it. She seems harsh to them. Her surroundings are not favourable to the development of the womanly or sentimental side of nature. Now, I want to talk about loneliness a bit. Quite lately, this topic comes up on a regular basis. If you get used to yourself and you like yourself, you can in fact live a good life on your own, but you need other people occasionally. But it's very important, in fact, to tackle loneliness. And this is just over a year that my son Andrew moved out, and I've been on my own. And I can tell you that both here and at Insegna, I enjoy this time, but then I go out and go and meet. So loneliness is a good thing in small doses. The same thing as with everything else in life. Good thing in a balanced way with the rest of one's life. And talking about the rest of one's life, now it's the time for me to show you Darwin. Let me go. Let me check my computer here. I need a drink. Oh God, I got it wrong again. Okay, never mind. Good, I've got it here. Now I'm going to show you. Going to show you. I went to a trip to Darwin with a group of people. So I'm just going to go through it and show you what I've got. I can only do it this way, really. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to start with this picture here. My son took us, Angela and myself, we went on this tour with for a couple of weeks. Okay, so I'm going to go from here, and I'm just going to keep going with it here. The next one, there we are, this is Melbourne Airport. And he comes along to take us there. There you are. Thank you, Andrew. And Angela is with me, of course, there. And Andrew's there. And this is the airport. We got there 3 or 4 hours before, just in case. Then you got to wait. And, of course, you know, the picture there, before there was nobody there, and now there's somebody there. The group, and slowly but surely, there we are. We met some, you know, people that came with us. And, of course, there are a couple of other people that I knew. She's a good singer, Mina and Giuseppe. She knew Dora Marquez, of course. Good singer, this one. There you are. And this is Angela, the organizer. just going to say something. Angela, this is the first time that I am actually with a group. And I want to thank you already because I hear so many good things about you. That you've been doing this for a long, long time.
25 years.
25 years?
Yes, I've been all around the world.
Oh my God, what have I done all this time?
The last one was South America.
Yes, I hope.
South America. South America.
Well, next time we'll do that. Fine. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll do this quite regularly during the course of what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And it'll be a real pleasure. Ok?
pleasure.
Grazie mille.
Thanks
Mi dispiace che Vince non è venuto.
Oh, no, next time you will.
Ok, ciao.
Ciao.
And this was in the plane, just before we started, we're waiting, and you got the mask, and people there. Then we get to Darwin Airport, just a little memory for me. And this is the bus. It was late at night when we arrived, etc. And here is the bus that took us there. And this is where we stayed, at the Oaks. Now that's the next morning. There we are. Beautiful. Have to get up early. You have to. For breakfast. So breakfast, we had breakfast, etc. And we were ready to, there's no need, that's only a quick shot. There you are, another selfie. There we go. Here we go. That's the front of the place. We're getting ready to go. The bus that we're waiting for, the bus didn't come, whatever. And I said, okay, we're going to go. That's where we stayed. And then we had to meet the others at a bus in a particular place because the bus wasn't there at the time or whatever. But it was good because we went the wrong way. They said, go one way. Angela and I went the wrong way. But as a result of that, we were able to really capture and enjoy Darwin, the back streets, because it's not a big city. It's 130,000 people. But, in all those buildings, you can imagine there isn't really much. And then we arrived in the centre of Darwin, and there are a lot of beautiful, I was struck by this one here, because when I saw Whitlam, there he is, with Indigenous people, giving the land back to the Indigenous person. You can look up the history of this, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to have a picture with Whitlam, with the Gough. So, look at this, beautiful. And I got to, and then there are a lot of other beautiful art, public art. And this is a Guni Mijina Gwala Daraniki saltwater country, etc. And can I say this? They've started to write in Indigenous languages, and you'll notice Badu Giri. That's our alphabet, the Romanized alphabet, which is good. You can use that for any language. Okay, that's a crocodile country here. Okay, and other people, other animals. There you are. And these are some of the. Of course, I take the opportunity to say something, no? Yes, no? Here we are. Well, we're in Darwin, right, Angela? Mm-hmm. And we're looking at some of the icons of this state, of this city, and of course the Northern Territory. What a surprise, huh? Very modern.
Yes.
What a surprise, truly and truly. And this Northern Territory Treaty Commission, it's a quick one. Yeah. The bureaucracy comes in. That's the outside of that place. And this is, again, Med Snake. Look at this. Unbelievable. Oh, welcome to Tony Angelino. Anna Sunda Lombardi coming again. Okay. Look at this. Beautiful. That's a big, there's a lot of work there. Just magnificent. You feel you're in a very special place, Darwin. It's taken me a lifetime to get there. Oh, well, never mind. One has to work, you know. You got to keep when you got family, business, this and that. So take some time off, people. Don't be like me. Although I've done a little bit, but anyway. And I walked into a place. I said, "Can I take? This is a beautiful place. Can I take a few pictures?" I said, "Yes, of course. Go for it." I love people like that. Now we go towards the centre of Darwin. It's a beautiful place. Information Centre. You got this. Former Reserve Bank of Australia. Beautiful building, old buildings. See that? Colonial. That's probably was saved from the cyclone, you know. There was a lot of green spaces here, and it was a really beautiful place. Beautiful centre. Town Hall ruins from they're to be congratulated, really, over the years. This was a coffee shop. You know, you got to visit, got to have a coffee, toilet, breaks, this and that. That's what you got to do. And that's outside. People enjoying themselves. And now this Darwin waterfront, you're going to go down, but we didn't go down. We didn't have time to go down, so we went up here to have a look. We had to meet our people. I didn't say much. Angela was in a hurry to go. Here we are. Love to see you again. I agree. Love to see you again too. Okay, these are the good for people want to, you know, want to do something. You can go around, hire one of these. There you are. A bit of history. Nice place, really and truly. Look at the roads. I was impressed with the road system wherever we went. It's unbelievable. Not well kept. So there you are. We were close to where we were supposed to meet our people. And in this particular park, I think there are some there are some memories of the Japanese invasion or the various wars that Australia has been involved in over the century, a couple of centuries. There they are. Nice place to visit. And thanks to Angela, because I would have just gone straight to the hotel. She said, "No, we got plenty of time, don't worry." Yeah. And here, at our leisure, there you are. Australian Infantry Battalion, you know, it's all the wars. They're there, all the plaques down there of all the wars. And that's the building that we're supposed to go and see, where we meet the others. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this little. I'll continue. I've got so much footage of where we visited that I'm going to have a real pleasure showing it to you in this World History podcast. Okay, so we're going to stop there and we'll continue next week. I'll continue next week with this from there. I hope you enjoyed that one. It's I am interested in history, but there's so much. And you can see that Australia is really such a great country where people have settled and have, brought the improvements. But most of Australia is empty. And in a civilized situation, you want your buildings, you want your roads, you want water, we want everything. Now, for someone who lives in the villages on the inside where there's none of these facilities, this must look like paradise. But to live in paradise, you got to work in a particular way. You have to develop skills over time. That's why I said I think it's going to take a long time, and people have to be patient on all sides to appreciate the difficulty of the great task which is ahead of Australia. And, we all contribute. We all contribute, regardless of what we do. Well, today, thank you very much for all those people who come on. It's really, I really am very grateful to you all. And I know that a lot of more people watch it during the week. And thank you to all those people who are there. Feel free to make a comment or to even suggest the things that you're interested in. Or if you like something more than another, why not? But I continue this for me, mainly with you in mind. And I bless every single hour that I spend here doing these things. Okay, on that note, grazie mille, thank you very much. Once again, see you next time from Tom Padula, from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. And now we finish.